The ash finally washed away, but a large blister formed on the back of my hand. Not knowing whom to blame, I bowed several times to the grave owner and burned a few more stacks of joss paper for them. Don't underestimate a broken jar. My uncle once taught me never to take advantage of the dead. Taking from the living can be repaid later, but taking from the dead is irreparable, damaging one's virtue and inviting retribution. Thinking of this, I examined the tombstone of the one whose water I borrowed. The birth and death years were faded. Only a vague photo remained, seemingly of a 4-year-old child. How pitiful. I rummaged in my pocket and found a lollipop. It was given as change when I bought the wine. I unwrapped it and placed it before the grave, using my sleeve to wipe the tombstone clean. This place has many unattended graves. The cemetery manager often clears and repurposes ownerless ones for resale. Given its condition, this child's grave must still have visitors. Otherwise, it would have been sold long ago. With the tombstone polished, I returned the jar to its place, thinking to buy a new one next time as compensation for the child. The next day, I began organizing the Red Church renovation. This was a major project. The government, eager for revenue, had strict terms, allowing work only at night to avoid disturbing daytime tourists and affecting ticket sales. Moreover, the contract specified renovating only the interior, absolutely not touching the outer red brick layer. Early morning, following hometown customs, I lit a string of firecrackers in front of the company sign. Though work was nocturnal, firecrackers must be lit at dawn. Unexpectedly, the firecrackers burned well but suddenly extinguished. I waited, approached to check, and just as I stepped near, they exploded violently. Luckily, I dodged, only tearing a few holes in my pants. This was not a good omen. The workers around exchanged worried looks. The superstitious Eli quickly grabbed a handful of glutinous rice from her bag and sprinkled it on me. It was thoughtful of her to always carry glutinous rice. Southeast Asian countries seem to have customs using it to ward off evil. Looking at my torn pants, I could only tell myself, in the interior decoration trade, one doesn't need fancy clothes. Next, I discussed the construction plan with the head worker, Old Za. He had worked with us since my uncle's time, a trusted associate. We calculated transporting materials near the church first, then leading workers in immediately after closing to avoid wasting time. To be sure, Old Za and I went to the Red Church ahead to measure according to the blueprints. Suddenly, a shrill voice came from behind. The bricks here are all antiques, shipped from France. Damage one and you'll be cursed. I turned in surprise, nearly bumping noses with the person. It was the old church manager. Rumors said he was a bit mentally unstable in recent years. Not wanting to argue, I nodded and led Old Za elsewhere. The sun was setting, and the last tourist left the church. The old manager, with his withered, tree branch-like hand trembling, handed me the keys and hastily disappeared around the corner, as if fleeing. Old Za and I held the keys, looking at each other in confusion. Could the Red Church have no night shift manager? Old Za comforted me, suggesting the night manager might be late, and advised arranging work first. At that moment, the last ray of sunlight vanished, and the streetlights in front of the church lit up one by one. I heard footsteps approaching from afar. Turning, a bald-headed boy ran past my feet. Thinking it was a worker's child brought along, I reached to grab him, fearing danger in the construction site. But my hand grasped only air. Who brought a kid here? That was fast. I turned and shouted. My voice echoed in the church, unanswered. I suddenly realized the church had no lights on. Standing at the door, I could see streetlight glow outside, but the church interior was like a black maw, swallowing all light. Old Za approached with an emergency lamp, saying the church lights likely had a main switch, but the manager hadn't shown it, so he sent workers to find it. 5 minutes later, the lights turned on, but the illumination was dim, insufficient. I instructed Old Za to bring extra floodlights tomorrow. I continued reviewing the blueprints, but the back of my hand throbbed painfully. Unable to endure, I called Old Za, gave instructions, and said I needed to go to the hospital to check, avoiding delays later. Unexpectedly, as soon as I stepped out of the church, my hand stopped hurting. I turned back, but upon re-entering, the back of my hand burned fiercely again. Old Za saw me pacing at the door with an odd expression, thinking I was worried about work, and was about to advise. But he noticed the blister on my hand, which had deflated, now swelling into a water-filled bubble right before our eyes. Without a word, Old Za pushed me out, warning of infection risk. I had to leave for a nearby hospital. Outside the church, the pain ceased, but the blister remained. The doctor asked if hot oil splashed on my hand while cooking. I said it was from burnt paper ash. He frowned, paused, then made the sign of the cross on his chest. While treating the blister, he said burning paper was pagan, and only faith in the Lord was the true path. Saigon has complex religions. Young people, especially the educated and those who studied abroad, mostly follow Catholicism. Elders worship Buddha or spirits. I'm used to perfunctory responses, so I nodded, outwardly agreeing but inwardly unconvinced. Just as I nodded, the blister suddenly burst. Pain like a sharp knife pierced through veins and nerves straight to my heart. My last memory was the doctor's panicked face. When I awoke, I was in a hospital bed. The doctor said my hand blister was severe, with infection risk requiring observation. But the church work was unfinished. I raised my hand. It was bandaged like a rice dumpling. The bandage on the back was soaked with fluid. The doctor said it was blister exudate. Pain surged again, making me tremble. The doctor increased the painkiller dose. I managed to call Old Za, learned everything was fine, then fell into a deep sleep. That night, sleep was restless. My hand throbbed intermittently, nightmares came in waves. In the dream, I was trapped in a strange room, hugging a pillow, curled in the corner with cries echoing. Lowering my head, my hand skin had red patches covered in white scales, spreading, itching and painful as if bitten by thousands of insects. My fingers and toes twisted. Raising my head, a rose-carved makeup mirror faced me. In it, a grotesque woman's face appeared, thick lips protruding, hair nearly gone, eyelids scarred, features like a skinned lion. "Who is this?" I asked in the dream. Turning, the stained glass windows on the walls turned light into fantastical colors. But in that light, the room was full of women like the one in the mirror. Behind me, leather shoes stepped on wooden floor. I turned. The woman in the mirror was me. The stained glass windows shattered suddenly. A white-gloved hand pointed from afar. I thought they pointed at me, but then masked people rushed in, using clubs to drive the mirror women to the corner. Then they grabbed a boy beside me. I hadn't even noticed when the boy appeared. The boy wailed, clutching my ankle. In the dream, I tried to hold him, but a heavy club struck my head. Blood flowed into my eyes. Everything turned red. Dizzy, I collapsed. The boy was dragged away. Raising my head, I shouted to him that seeing the Virgin Mary was like seeing me. He nodded, his desperate eyes piercing my heart. Gritting my teeth, ignoring blows, I lunged toward the window. In a flash, I was in a forest. This time, healthy, I walked silently through the jungle. An explosion rang out. Suddenly, a grinning human head was in my hands. In the dream, unafraid, I calmly kissed its forehead.